Good morning. My name is Craig Marinello. I am the Director of Career Services at Southeastern Louisiana University, and it is my pleasure to talk to you all today about the Management and Leadership Institute and the work that has happened over the course of 23 to 24. On August 14th of 2023, we came from across this state, 2 by 2, to jump onto Caprice's Management and Leadership arc that was going to take us around the state and provide for us knowledge, wisdom, information to help us become the better managers, better leaders for the UL system and for our institutions as a whole. Each of us, of the 20 of us that you see behind, came in with our own perceptions of what was going to happen. What was it going to be like? Would it be like other leadership programs that we've been a part of? Dr. Henderson quickly let us know that this was going to be different. He helped us to thread and understand what this program was all about. We got to come to your institutions, all 9 ULS institutions across this state. Our presidents shared their own struggles, shared the own things that were happening in their backyard. They shared their homes with us. They shared their families with us. Again, we started to realize that this program was going to be more than the perceived opportunity that we had come to think in our minds and in what was going to happen. As we went along with that perception, with that knowledge component, we gained more and more knowledge about ourselves. We gained knowledge about each other and started to form relationships that created opportunities across cities and across campuses. One of the wonderful byproducts of this program is the relationships that are created across these campuses. As the year progressed, we also saw tremendous change in leadership at many of our institutions, change at our own UL system. In that change, we understood the original vision of why we were here, our own task that Dr. Henderson gave to us, which was, what is the value of higher education? What is the value of a degree? Many of us have seen that in the news, all across the news. The media consistently portrays it. What is that value? Is it worth the value? So we began to use that lens every time we visited a new institution, every time we got to listen to our president's talk, to our vice president's talk, to staff members, to many of the folks from the UL system that came and shared knowledge with us. They helped us to create a 10,000-foot view, threading the needle through all of our campuses, creating one UL system and helping us to understand that. As President Gallo took over, he didn't just come in as the new ULS president. He came in and became a part of our group. He spent January with us and February with us. He ate meals with us. He broke bread. We got to know him. We got to know about his family, and he got to know about ours. A relationship that again continues to thread and continues to provide that 10,000-foot point of view, but also brings us closer to the impact of our stakeholders, our UL system, our government officials, because President Gallo was also a government official, and he helped us to understand the importance that our government officials play. We are all one big team: staff, faculty, presidents, UL system, Board of Regents, our communities, our politicians, our friends. And so today, what we have done is we have taken and split this up, as President or Dr. Henderson did for us in the fall, as President Gallo helped us to crystallize in the spring. We're going to talk about the internal perspective of the value of higher education. We're going to talk about how we, in partnership with our government officials, can continue to tell that story and continue to show our own value right here in Louisiana. And lastly, we're going to end with the external messaging of how we can continue to push a positive message to replace a negative one. To start, and through this process, we will have Dr. Edward Holt will begin. We will move on to Dr. DJ Min, and Dr. Jamie Newman, concluding with Curtis Rogers, soon to be Dr. Curtis Rogers, and ending with myself. So, Dr. Edward Holt.
Thank you. Good morning. For this first portion of it, the group that you see before you looked at some internal strategies to bolster growth at the system level. Much of what's on the slide behind me would be familiar to this audience, but in setting the stage, let's go ahead and get a couple of common definitions. We know that our student body in the past, we have this traditional college undergraduate student, that 18 to 21-year-old that we're used to coming out of high school. But we know that there has been a change in the higher ed landscape, and we're seeing more and more of the non-traditional undergraduate students coming with their own unique sets of skills, their own unique sets of abilities, for their own unique set of needs. And so the student body is changing. Likewise, the sources of funding are largely changing as well. Many of us are familiar with this, but just as a quick recap, you've got the state and local appropriations, the state and local grants, federal appropriations, and tuition revenue. Tuition revenue being that total revenue from tuitions and fees, including student financial aid that is applied to tuition and fees. And so when we're looking at internal growth, one of the areas that we have the most control over is that of tuition revenue. And to dive into why I said that, we have this chart right here. That bar on the left-hand side for each of the institutions is our first year retention rate from first year to second year. Those numbers are hovering in the sort of 70s, low 70s, 80s range. The bar on the right is one that's a bit more disconcerting. That's the 6-year graduation rate for each of the institutions. And what you see is you see the disparity between each of those. If we're looking at bolstering internal revenue, it means that we are losing vast amounts of revenue from those students that are coming that first to second year to those that are graduating within those 6 years. We know the numbers vary at each institution, but if we're able to retain for each year an additional 120 students, we're retaining an additional $1 million of revenue that can be useful for a wide variety of things. And thus, when we look at this number, we start to think to ourselves, how do we bring those numbers into closer alignment? How do we make sure that just because we're accepting students, we also are making a commitment to graduating those students as well? And so looking at these numbers, they say one thing that I could say about numbers and statistics is you've got that old adage that there's lies, blank lie, or there's lies, blank lies, and then there's statistics. You also have that classic ESPN show, numbers never lie. But in the midst of them, you have this idea of context. And so really briefly, I just want to give a little bit of context about one of those larger disparities, the one for Grambling State University. Grambling State University, the HBCU of the ULS system, there have been a series of longitudinal studies that talk about HBCUs and graduation rates. From this research, we know that students of color are more likely to receive Pell Grants, more likely to have graduated with a GPA under 2.5, and less likely to have taken AP courses in high school. And thus they are coming less prepared. And yet, HBCUs are graduating them at a higher rate and doing so while being historically underfunded. Likewise, the National Bureau of Economic Research compared HBCUs to similar institutions in which Black students are more likely to graduate than students in a non-HBCU. And not only are they more likely to graduate, they're more likely to graduate with higher feelings of job security, upward mobility, and civic engagement. So lastly, were HBCUs and non-HBCUs to enroll demographically identical populations of students, HBCUs would retain and graduate students at a higher rate than their counterparts. So that's why we see these numbers. We have to make sure that we're always giving context to it. But the numbers that we really want to focus on and provide some suggestions to today are this discrepancy. On the ULS system, our average first-year retention rate is 71%. Lots of resources, lots of time and effort have been put into that rate, but we are losing students. In that 6-year rate, we then have 51%. Not just losing students, but losing revenue. So what are some suggestions? What are some ways? What is some best practices to do? As a system, we need to continue to identify high-risk students in course enrollments. We need to dig in to the DFW rates for what have been considered weed out courses in the past, and we need to make sure that we're putting resources into it so that students can have success, students can be retained beyond just the first year. As a part of that, we need to make sure that we enhance senses of belonging for the students, building things such as living learning communities, so where different cohorts can go and operate together, so different cohorts can have this sense of belonging, this sense of group motivation to move forward. We know that peer mentoring is also a thing, bolstering peer mentoring. Why peer mentoring? Because faculty, staff, board members can say one thing, students might not hear it, but if somebody says it a slightly different way, if a peer says it a slightly different way, it might resonate more, might give them a sense of belonging to continue to persist. Along with that, professional to student mentorship, building on those networks that we all are a part of. But lastly, it's incumbent on us to make sure the individuals that interface with the students more often are equipped with the abilities to make sure that those students are able to graduate, to move that 51% much closer to that 71%, and ideally move all of those statistics upwards. Investing in faculty instructional development can happen in a couple of different ways. The first are to invest in teaching and learning centers at our universities, invest in instructional designers so that best practices of education are passed on, but then also have the ability for faculty to be able to demonstrate that with teaching certification. Certification that might come from an internal center of teaching and learning within an institution, or might come from a national association such as the ACUE or from Quality Matters. In all of these things, helping students have a sense of belonging. We know that it's easier in business to retain a customer, less costly to retain a customer than to gain a new one. When we're looking at the changing landscape, we know that we have work to go, and that work can happen in making sure that we're investing to get that 51% up. And just little things like we've said with this mentorship will work. As a quick little anecdote, I had a student that stopped out about 2.5 years ago, and every semester I just send a quick email checking in on her because, of course, first and foremost, she is a person, and then say, hey, let me know when you're ready to come back. I'm pleased to announce that I've gotten an email back from her. I'm pleased to announce that she's going to finish in summer one, and President Lamel, you'll get to shake her hand in the fall. And that's just an example of these best practices, building that sense of belonging, building that sense of mentorship, because we can talk all day about the statistics of 51%. We can talk all day about if we get another 120 people in a semester, we get an extra $1 million of revenue. But we have to remember at the end of the day, what we're focusing on is on people, helping people be able to not just be accepted, but be able to thrive. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the next portion to Dr. DJ Min.
All right, thank you all for being here today and giving us this opportunity to present to everyone. So for the second part of the presentation, this was the group that worked together to talk briefly about how to enhance legislative support for higher education. And seeing everybody's expression, I can think that we all have the same thing going through our heads right now when we first got this topic. But it was a challenge to us personally because we haven't had a lot of experience when we first were introduced to this topic. So just wanted to briefly give you some context of the things that we're discussing here as well. And a lot of the things kind of overlap with our first presentations. I'll go briefly. But a lot of the information that you see here, and I don't think this is a surprise to those in the room, but higher education has value to society. Every internal research that we have, every external research that we have, highly suggests that the value of higher education to society is multifaceted, encompassing economic, social, cultural, and environmental dimensions. It has value. So the issue that we face here in Louisiana is the ideal place that we all want us to be in as a society in higher education. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. There's a long way to go. And at the same time, the support that we need to get to that place is not there yet as well. And it would be really great if we can get more support in this sense within our higher education in Louisiana towards our educational system. So when we were first addressing this question, there was a few assumptions that we had made, at least personally myself, in that we had thought that all we needed to do was really provide our legislators with objective information that we can help them really provide that support, give them quantitative information about the value. As we were talking with our legislators, as we were doing some research about this area, we quickly came to realize that we did not know about a lot of things that we were assuming. We did not know much about that. It was surprisingly hard to figure out how the communication process works, who our legislators were, what happens within a university in terms of trying to reach out to legislators. There was a lot of information that we were not fully aware of. And that led us to go back and think about, well, what's the point of thinking about the quality of the communication, the type of information we need to provide, when the key fundamental aspect of communication, persuasion, willingness to act, the foundational aspect of having a strong relationship was unclear. So we wanted to go back and really think about, before we try to make any persuasion attempts, any communication with our legislators, we wanted to go back and see, do we have a strong foundational relationship with our latest legislative counterparts? And how can we build a strong relationship so that our messages, our communications can be more persuasive? Being in academia, of course, there's a couple of theories up there. Any theories in either communication, marketing, social psychology, cognitive psychology, you will all see a lot of theories that highly suggest that relationships is a key part in communicating and persuading the people that you are trying to communicate with. So with that in mind, what we wanted to provide was some practical suggestions on what we can think about to foster those relationships. Two pieces that we wanted to talk or stress about was to try to find ways to increase the frequency of our interactions and bring everybody closer with one another. The second part was, when that opportunity arises, we want to make sure that those who are in the space where they have an opportunity to talk with our stakeholders, we're ready to do that. And we have a common language that we can use to portray our messages. In terms of interaction frequency and proximity, increasing that, there's a few ideas here that we just wanted to talk briefly about that hopefully helps that. And we can all take this back home and kind of think about some suggestions around that. Inviting people on to events on campus. From UNO, we have a lot of fun events on campus, things like crawfish boils, things like Mardi Gras parades. I think it would be a great idea, and we all thought about this, to really send out invitations more towards our community, more towards our legislators, so that they can enjoy being in our presence and have that opportunity to talk with us. But before I go any deeper, when we talk about building a relationship with our legislators, we wanted to also stress that it's not just a direct path that we need to think about. We do have a direct path to our legislators, but we also have indirect path to our legislators through multiple stakeholders, people like alumni, community and industry partners. So I think what we're trying to say is, when we're talking about interaction, frequency, and proximity, we want to make sure that all those people who are a part of our stakeholders are all invited, and we have the opportunity to communicate with them. We can obviously attend events such as ULS Day at the Capitol, but also some things here that, just coming from some personal examples, I love wearing our UNO shirts when I'm outside. Our president can kind of attest to that, because we've seen each other outside during our outings to the zoo or at the aquarium. But I love wearing our UNO shirts. And over the past 6 months, just to give you an example, I was surprised at how many people would come up to me and ask questions about UNO just because I have a UNO shirt. I've been at the zoo and I was wearing a UNO MBA shirt, and somebody would just come up to me and say that, "Oh, hi, I'm an alumni. How's UNO doing these days?" And I just start talking about that. I was at Whole Foods about 3 months ago, and a person who was working at Whole Foods, came up and asked me if I worked at UNO, and I said yes. She was considering coming back to school after taking a break for 2 years, and she couldn't figure out how to do that. So I led her to Compete LA. I was at a football game at my kid's school, and one of my kid's friend's parents saw that I had a UNO MBA shirt on. He is now participating in the UNO EMBA program. So just by having that shirt on, I've been meeting with so many people, not just legislators, who goes to that path indirectly and was able to communicate the value of education, how to reach that goal. So I've talked with our university marketing people, and I've suggested maybe we should all really invest in one really good shirt that all of our staff and faculty would love to wear. I go volunteer at our campus events because I get a free shirt, and I love wearing those things. But some of those shirts do not fit well, and the design is questionable. So I would love there to be an investment in one shirt, make a lot of that, and maybe provide that to our staff and faculty who would love to wear that and represent the campuses outside where they are. So those are some simple suggestions that I think would, it could be it could, bring some ideas to the table. The next part that we wanted to talk about was creating a common language. And I think it's really important for us to have that with us so that when those types of opportunities arise, we are prepared to say the same message over and over again, get more strength into the things that we say. So we have tried to come up with an example of what we think we might be able to do to create that message. And for that part, Dr. Jamie Newman will talk more about that. Thank you.
So as I share my comments today, you'll be getting a handout from my colleagues over there, and I'll go over that in just a second. So as DJ mentioned, really we realize that it's about what we say and making sure that we know what to say. And when we're talking to people, we never know who we're talking to. I could be talking to one of you and not realize that you're on the system board or a university president or an alumni or an industry partner, or maybe even a legislator. We don't all know who our legislators are or those in other districts. So providing people with a common language is really important. So as we thought about what we could do, our own relationships with people in our community and what we were tasked to do, which is to try to communicate the value of higher education, how do we really begin to tackle that challenge? So certainly, as DJ mentioned, engagement is really important, being out there and talking about it. But education is also really important, and not educating you or the legislators, but educating us, the people who work at your universities, so that when we are out there or we see someone at a crawfish boil, we know what we should say. We take for granted, I think, that we all in this room value higher education. That's why we're in this room. But we may not all have the same words, the same idea of what that value really is. And so if we all go talk to people, we may say different things, and that mixed messaging could lose the message altogether. So what we did was we thought that if we came up with a tool that would provide that to the people who work at our universities, we might begin to develop that common language to be able to better have that conversation, to help people develop those strong relationships. Not everybody will know what to say, might say the wrong thing, might say a contradictory statement. So what we did, and thank you to Alyssa Coates who helped us to put these together, because none of us are graphic designers. We're also not communicators. So thank you, ChatGPT, for helping make some of this sound a little bit better than it did when we started. There are two examples. So you may not have, you might have one for Nichols or one for tech. I don't think I made enough, really. I didn't appreciate how many people would be here, so that's awesome. But what you'll notice, no matter which copy you have, is that the inside panel is the same in both of them. So what we did was we thought about what are the words that we could use to describe the value of higher education if we're talking to students, prospective students. What are the words if we're talking to our community? And what are the words if we're talking about the greater state of Louisiana? These are our words. These might not be your words. These might not be your ideas. And so if you, the system, you, the university presidents could help us, then I think we would feel confident in delivering a consistent message as we're out in the community. We made 2 examples thinking that this would be really cool if each university had their own, where everybody had the same inside, the same broad message for the value of higher education, but on the back, or, you know, however you fold it, each university could have their own, 1, branding, and 2, their own unique talking points. So each of our schools, although we value the same things, we each have different strengths and different goals. And so if we know what those strengths and goals are that you want us to promote, and we have the words to share that with people, then again, we're communicating your message. We're helping to reiterate it in the community, and share it with people, whether those are our legislators or people, our neighbor who we don't know knows the legislator, and can communicate that message for us. So I just want to make sure I don't leave anything out. Sorry, I'm not as good as those guys without notes. So I just want to say before I end that, again, this is a draft. This is something that our group came up with that we thought would provide an example of what a tool could be. And we think that with your words, again, for the system and for the presidents, that we'll have a tool that can help us have a stronger voice, a stronger messaging, and in turn, stronger relationships so that we can continue to have the positive impact we know we have, but not everybody else always appreciates. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our last group and Curtis Rogers.
Our task was to come up with an external message to address kind of the public's decreasing confidence in higher education. We've all heard the rhetoric of college degrees aren't worth it. Do you really even need a college degree? And though we present plenty of research on the contrary, negative voices are heard the loudest, unfortunately. Talking heads, college-educated talking heads, which we won't claim all of those, can yell about the futility of higher education and then step away from the debate whenever the truths and the facts are presented, which, oh, that's us. Look at us. This is what the perceived value up there is, but the facts, the true facts are remain static. But unfortunately, so is our message. Being academics, we tend to present data about the benefits of our trade in a confident manner, maybe not the most exciting manner, and then leave the discussion assuming that we have proven a point. We show economic data on social capital. We explain how educated citizens provide high levels of innovation and thus improving the standard of living for everyone. And after all these extremely valid points of view, we still are wondering, why do we hear any ounce of opposition? We don't suggest to be as abrasive as our naysayers, but we should equal their persistence. We should take control of the narrative with a positive message that also has the enormous benefit of being true. And doesn't it feel good to be right, you know? So for every one-off story, there's a student who perhaps had a negative experience at a university, there are 1,000 that will proclaim college as a life-changing moment. And this change of life, was it because these students came in there and now they realize they're going to make all this money? Well, of course not. These life-changing events that circle these circumstances are intimate encounters of the people that they will probably be. And they liked what they saw, and they received affirmation of this vision by seeing it in their peers as well. Is that worth it? I mean, what isn't that worth? So the message that we want to get out to the public, the external message, is one of revelation. We are in the revelation selling business. We are in the self-discovery business, self-proclamation of extreme capability. Our graduates, after wrestling the humble throes of education, should be proud to announce that I am an educated person. We offer a truly unique experience where you can come through our doors and play in this pantheon of knowledge, finding out what you're interested in. And finding out what you're interested in is finding out somewhat of who you are. A person who embraces the skills and the knowledge that we provide during their tenure will undoubtedly be poised to make more money in the workforce. However, no price can be attached to that aha moment you see in a student's eyes when they finally have realized the concept. And isn't that why we're here? And don't you remember when that happened to you? Now that that sermon is over, I want to discuss how our group wanted to phrase this message. And we wanted to do that external videos of little snips that I found from folks around the campus at McNeese, where they talked about, answered questions for us along the vein of what is the value of education to you? How has higher education changed your life? So I'm going to show you now these little snips that we created. If I can get them to work.
My name is Samuel Gill. I am a two-time student body president at McNeese State University, and I am the Board of Regents student member for 2023-2024. A college degree brings great opportunity. And I invested fully into my college education and all the benefits it could potentially bring. You invest, of course, your time and money, but to me, you get so much more out of it than just a degree. You get a lot of extra skills that no one talks about enough, and they're so valuable. Higher education has been severely beneficial to my leadership journey in that it has allowed me to grow into the leader I've been meant to be. A college degree is just so valuable because it puts you in a different category of employment. It allows you a lot more versatility. College radically changed my life and saved it. Whatever you put in, you're going to get out. College helps you find that path. And if I didn't go into higher education, finding that answer would probably be a lot harder for me because I wouldn't have the leadership experience or the politics experience that I have now. And if I had to figure that out on my own without a college degree, I think that'd be very tough. We must support higher education and her interests because it changes the lives of our students, it changes the lives of families, and it changes the lives of every single person in the state of Louisiana for the greater benefit of the state.
I'm sure you all know him and you know that young man is going places. This is Matilde Miltaro. She is also from McNeese.
I'm Matilde Mulatero, and I graduated with a bachelor in marketing in 2022. And after that, I pursued my MBA, and I graduated in December 2023. I think the most valuable part for me while I was in college was being able to stay organized and have a routine and being able to meet deadlines, being able to be organized and plan within the certain type of subjects that I was taking. I used to take seven classes at a time, and being a full-time student athlete was a little bit challenging sometimes. So I think it helped me, gave me an extra organization and learn how to plan my days and not going at the last minute, which is something that can be related in the workplace where people want to know that you have the ability to be on top of your projects and meeting deadlines. So that's something that helped me for sure. It helped develop my leadership skills, and it made me realize that I'm more a leader than someone that gets assigned what to do. Of course, at any job, you're probably going to have to start at a lower position, but a company, if they know that you have those type of skills developed already, they're more impromptu to hire you compared to someone else.
When I went around campus to try to get these interviews, I had many more, to get to hear these stories, to hear these more personable stories. I can't speak for everybody else, but I had a 100% success rate on people wanting to talk about this because it's a feel good thing. They want to talk about it. So I think that we should definitely capitalize on this end product that we have, these two magnificent students that McNeese produced. And I know they're likewise across the whole system where they're there, and these stories are there for us to be able to put out, to snuff out all the negative stories that are constantly bombarding us. We can put out this right here because this is real. These are real students. This isn't just a statistic. This is I know them. So anyway, I want to have Craig come on up, and he's going to take us to the end shoot here.
So where's the beef? A slogan from Wendy's from the early 1980s. Where's the beef? Many of you are smiling out there because you remember it. Why do you remember a commercial that happened well over almost 40 years ago? It's because it was a consistent message delivered continuously that created emotion in us all. We love those three ladies, the way that they made, the laughter that they brought. What you heard today, or what you have heard today, is using a similar philosophy. There is a negative perception in the media, in the messaging that goes out about the value of college education, about the value of higher education. That is a farce. The perception doesn't meet the reality of the facts that we have found. So is knowledge power? When you think about that, because I hear that often, every time I talk to a student, which I do often, is knowledge power? And invariably, they always tell me yes. And I always have to look them in the eyes and tell them no. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge without action is simply words on a page. It's simply things that we've heard or learned, but did nothing with. The three groups today hopefully brought to you action, whether it would be from the actionable components of internal work, of helping people internally, of peers working with peers, which also tied to the last group of how one student can influence another. Why are they not seeing? Why are potential students or students at all not seeing the positive messaging about the value of higher education? It's simple. It's not on Twitter. It's not on Instagram. And it's not on TikTok. Because these messages are out there. Curtis said it when he said that there's thousands of stories out there, not just from our students, but from our former students who are now our alumni, people who are in the business world, in the nonprofit world, in the entrepreneurial world, that are actually doing and living the message. When I work with students on a day in, day out basis, we look at jobs. We look at the opportunities that exist in this state. 9.5 out of 10 require a higher education degree just to apply. Just to apply. Right? Where are more stories that exist out there? They're on LinkedIn. As you look behind me, you will see that companies are pushing out stories from our students and from our alumni. Alumni are pushing out those stories. And internships, experiential learning, getting your feet in the water and doing the work that you were learning while you were on campus. The more we preach this message, the more that students hear this message from each other, the more powerful it will become. The more they will learn from each other. Luke Norton gave advice to other interns on what to do. How can we in this room and beyond this room continue to share this message? Consistent message shared continuously. It's as simple as sharing it externally on our own feeds. There was a commercial years ago from Verizon that used to have a little guy walking around with horn-rimmed glasses that would walk around with 250 people behind him and say, "This is my network." We all have those networks online. We all have those networks in person. How are we sharing our messaging with our networks? Because everybody in this room believes everything we've been saying, that the value of higher education is so far beyond the negative perceptions that exist out there that it's almost comical that the other gets so much press. Action. What can we take action on? From our second group, you have it in your hands. Just a simple brochure, just simple messaging. I loved it when DJ talks about wearing just university materials and being out in the public. I've had similar experiences. I ran into a mom and her son at Lowe's. Those who know me know I'm a bit of an extrovert and know that I love to engage with other people. So they were looking for a little skill saw. Naturally, I put in my 2 cents. The next thing I know is that this student was a transfer student who had come from out of state to Southeastern and was having some trouble with his scholarship because something had happened with hours to where he only got 11 hours in the fall, but it was another hour that was going to be given back in the end in the spring. But it had messed a little bit with his scholarship, and his mom and he were both upset. By hearing that story, within minutes, I was able to give them a card, say, you send me an email and we'll get this squared away. I reached out to my teammates back at our college, back at Southeastern, and it was done within 24 hours. It's stories. It's stories about us as employees, as members of our institutions, coming together and working towards creating value for higher education. As we close out, in November of last year, when President Gallo took over, or was beginning to take over, and strangely enough, we were visiting with Grambling, he called us the Renaissance chapter because so much change had happened during the course of our time here. The relationships that we created through this group, the relationships that we created, and the time that we got to spend across your campuses. So many stories have I learned that I've shared, that we all have shared. The culinary experiences at Nichols. What a wonderful time. We learned that to be a president of a university, you should have a very, very big dog, because it seems like all of our presidents have large animals. That's a little joke, but true. We learned that presidents struggle too, that there are true struggles, and the humility with which our president spoke to us was amazing. I mean, just amazing. And it just showed that they're just people like us and want to win and want to help educate the great minds of our state, and not just help educate them, but take it forward to helping them take action on that knowledge and make it powerful, powerful for all of our stakeholders, for our legislators, for our universities, for our staff, for our vice presidents, for our communities, for our faculty, and most importantly, for the individual themselves. To, as Dr. Edward Holt said, not just be accepted, but to thrive. We want our graduates to thrive, but they have a part in that too. They have to take action on the knowledge they receive. They have to make their future. So to close, I want to thank the presidents in this room for bringing us into your homes, for bringing us onto your campuses, and for sharing so much with us. It was just amazing. I want to thank the vice presidents, the staff members, the faculty, the deans, all the folks who spoke with us and shared your knowledge, all of the different folks at the UL system that shared their time, some board members, that shared their time and helped us to see this experience as so much more than just leadership, but to actually gain knowledge that we can take action on. I want to thank both of the presidents of the UL system. Dr. Henderson, thank you so much for sharing your vision with us, for helping us to see things in such a different way and in your own unique way of communicating. President Gallo, for helping us to understand the legislative side, but also what it's like to be someone new going into such an important role and coming from being a president of a university, being a legislator, and now moving into the president of the UL system. And most importantly, Dr. Caprice Ayub, our mentor, our leader, the person who made all of this real to us. There aren't words that I could share as a representative of our group that could express enough thanks for the things that you did for us, the lessons that you taught us, the courage that you brought to this year for each and every one of us can never be replicated, other than to say you will forever be a part of our lives, a part of our family, and a part of this journey. We care about you immensely, and the reality of this program so far exceeded the perceptions that I personally had, and then I know the members of our group had, that it's just beyond approach. And so thank you very much all for spending the time, for listening to us talk, for giving us the opportunity to not only learn, but to take action on what we've learned, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. And that just is not from me, that is from our entire group. Thank you.